I want to do it again before I
Do it again.
I will do it again.
But can it just end on thank you?
Thank you. Hey, welcome to Media Matters. I'm Jack.
I'm Sean.
So you might be wondering why Sarah isn't on the show today. Well, apparently she's got better things to do. So welcome to the show, Sean.
Thank you.
Put down your newspapers and turn off your radios. It's time to talk about Australia's media regulation. Last week the government announced changes to how media will be regulated in Australia. And this is quite a big deal, as it's the first time in over 20 years that media regulation has been considered. As part of these changes, the 2 out of 3 rule, which prevents companies from owning a radio station, a television channel and a newspaper in the same market at the same time, and the 75% reach rule, which prevents one media outlet from reaching more than 75% of the entire Australian population. Both of these rules are set to be scrapped. The logic behind this move seems fairly clear. Back in 1992, when these laws were first introduced, print, television and radio were the dominant mediums, and these laws helped to prevent the formation of monopolies. But following the arrival of pay TV and, the internet, these traditional media outlets have become less dominant, while newer forms of media have been able to flourish without these kinds of restrictions. These laws predated the internet as we know it today, and couldn't have anticipated anything like the streaming service Netflix. A lot has changed since 1992 when these laws came out. Seinfeld was popular, Clinton was running for president. Wait, isn't that the same as it is now? Some things have changed since 1992, but how we regulate media in Australia isn't one of those things. The last time significant media reform was proposed was back in 2011, when then Communications Minister Stephen Conroy proposed the idea of a public interest media advocate. This was strongly criticised by many outlets in the media, and even led to comparisons with some of history's most notorious dictators, which, wasn't harsh at all. These changes will open up the way for a lot of mergers and acquisitions among Australian media companies. Fairfax and Channel 9 are expected to join together, while News Corp is probably looking to buy Channel 10. Regional networks like Win and Prime are also now allowed to join with their metropolitan counterparts. Also introduced are increases in local content requirements for broadcasters, up from 720 minutes every 6 weeks to 900 over the same period. While these proposed changes are long overdue, there are a few voices in the Australian media that don't think the changes go far enough. Chairman of News Corp Australasia, Michael Miller, has criticised the reforms for only dealing with the 2 out of 3 rule and the 75% reach rule, and for ignoring other areas like the anti-siphoning provisions that keep the main sporting events in Australia on free-to-air TV. It's not hard to see why News Corp would want to abolish the rules around free-to-air sport. The company owns Foxtel and would stand to gain hugely if they could buy exclusive access to main sporting events like the World Cup, the Australian Open and the AFL Grand Final. There are concerns that with the relaxing of ownership and reach laws, Australia's already very highly concentrated media landscape might become even more so. The internet has definitely diversified Australia's media environment, but traditional outlets like print and television still hold a lot of influence over our lives, particularly when it comes to things like how we look at politics. So for that reason, we should still be very wary of monopolies. On the other hand, locally made programs will continue to struggle against international content if some of the restrictions on their reach and ownership aren't relaxed. Regional broadcasters in particular are feeling the sting, not only from international outfits like Netflix, but from domestic stations like Channel 9 and Channel 10, who can now stream their content into regional markets, effectively bypassing this 75% reach rule. But even with these changes, it's likely that local content and Australian media outlets will continue to struggle against online content. Free-to-air viewership has been declining for a number of years, while streaming services grow more and more popular. And this is not to mention our love of online downloading. Australia is still #1 in the world for piracy, and this probably isn't going to change anytime soon while content is still so expensive to access here. Reform is definitely needed though, and these changes will help to bring Australia's media regulation into the 21st century.
There has been a spike in discussion recently surrounding illicit drug policy in Australia. Following on from a rather deadly 12 months that saw 5 young Australians die as a result of taking ecstasy, the media has been consistently discussing possible changes to drug policy to better protect users and minimise harm. Debates about how to tackle drugs in Australia are not new, nor are they new anywhere. Australia has taken a law and order approach to drugs, criminalising both the use and distribution of illicit drugs. This policy has been about as successful as the first episode of Media Matters. The argument at the moment centres around how to best minimise the harmful effects of illegal drugs. There seems to be 2 fairly distinct sides to this debate. The prevailing and historically powerful side is the one that criminalises drug use in the vain hope that this might somehow deter people from using drugs. The other, more progressive argument says that decriminalisation and regulation will reduce the harm as well as the strain on law enforcement. Criminalising drug use is like trying to outlaw masturbation. It doesn't work. People love smoking bongs and eating pingers as much as their morning coffee and their Friday afternoon beers. There has never been a society in human history that doesn't use drugs. We all use drugs every day. We drink coffee, we drink alcohol, and it's the legal ones that do us the most harm. Tobacco kills 20,000 people a year in Australia, alcohol more than 5,000. Both are legal drugs, and both clearly do significantly more harm than all illicit drugs combined. This isn't an argument over facts. It's an ideological war, and one that is now being waged in the media across the country. The media has a massive role to play in agitating for change, and it feels as though the current trajectory is indeed for change. As recently as a week ago, the Sydney Morning Herald was reporting on a plan by 2 renegade New South Wales doctors to begin implementing pill testing at festivals, so users can know what's in their drugs regardless of the legality. Not surprisingly, the government of New South Wales, which has consistently pushed their own failed policy of criminalisation, condemned the plan. Because hey, why try something new when the Stoner Sloth campaign has been so successful?
Stoner Sloth?
Pill testing has been around a while in places like Europe, but has only recently begun featuring regularly in the Australian media. The tragic and sadly preventable deaths of 5 young Australians over the summer has clearly reverberated across the nation. Richard Di Natale, national leader of the Greens, wrote a compelling article in The Guardian accusing some media outlets, namely the Courier Mail, of muddying the waters on the debate and presented evidence-based policies as opposed to ideological ones. He called for the immediate implementation of pill testing and the removal of sniffer dogs at events that could lead users to dangerously consume all their drugs at once. He also led a drug summit in Canberra to canvass other policy ideas in the hope of reducing the harm drugs do in our society. The media is the single most powerful force for change. Governments, even backward ones that rely on false narratives like the New South Wales government, are at the behest of the people. The media has the power to get the facts out there and end the neglect of evidence-based policy in this country. And that's why media matters.
Hey, thanks for watching. Let us know what you thought about topics this week. And as always, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.